maybe the irony of it is also sometimes we had to tread a fine line because we had to screen it to them and have them approve it, which they did. All three companies did approve it. But not for television, though.
Are you just trying to document the culture of the companies that existed at that particular point in time? Or were you just, or you had your lens? Because I feel that the scenes where you were showing the cleaning going on in the office and some of the heads of engineering talking about really meta subjects was really like, it was very humorous. So I felt that your perspective and your view of things also came to an extent there. So were you really also trying to make a commentary, or it is just a documentation of how these organizations were at that time?
I think in some ways it was both. I mean, as I said, this came out of a research project we were doing. And in any ethnographic research, you go in with questions, but then you learn a lot more from the place you're in and the people you talk to, and new questions come. And so it's like a conversation that builds over time. And most of the characters in these films are people we talk to multiple times. And so then you begin to frame your questions around ideas or concerns that they have. But as a sociologist, certainly when I wrote about the software industry, I had a point of view, I had an argument. In the film, we were trying to create a subtext, I think, and that's the tricky part of editing, which, putting it together, that Gautam can talk about. But again, we didn't want to make a kind of very in-your-face argument, and as he said, because we had to screen it to the companies and get it cleared. So even if I had a very critical perspective on things I saw there, we could not articulate that. But we tried to, but we did kind of try to show the everyday life of work in these places and document that.
Yeah, also there's no such thing as neutral documentation. No, even if you just put a camera in one corner of the room and leave it, it's never neutral. Where exactly you decide to put up the camera and what portions you decide to use. Personally, I was actually quite happy that the companies insisted on an NDA, because it's more fun to do something that is on the razor's edge kind of thing. It's that where you're expressing a point of view without it being obvious. This is the film, incidentally, that's gone to the most festivals. For some reason, people select this much more than. But whenever we've screened it in, not just in Bangalore and other Indian cities too, many people have thought of it as more like a corporate film, like promotional. And I can see why that happens. But there are those passages, and even the portions where these heads are talking. One of them, by the way, Subodh, started Atagalata, or he's one of the people who heads Atagalata. The person who talks about that DNA and all that, so that's a smart guy. So, they're all really smart, but they're also caught up in this corporate world.
What I understood from the film, correct me if I'm wrong, was an conscious effort towards building a culture. And I have read your papers on the middle class environmentalism and middle class culture in Bangalore. And we see over the years, this culture in the workspace have transcended the workspace space into the everyday lives. Within that context, how do you see the middle class, culture standing in Bangalore today? How has that transcended from the workspaces to the everyday life and community building in Bangalore?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't really been following up on the question of the middle class in Bangalore since I did this earlier work. And I'm sure there's been a lot of transformations. But I think one of the arguments I did make back then was that because the IT industry was bringing in new cultures of work and new kinds of orientations, and most importantly, it created a kind of new middle class simply because of the salary levels that were on offer, which were much, much higher than other industries and government jobs, etc. So it did promote a certain kind of consumption-oriented culture, and we see the effects of that in terms of the various services and new kinds of sectors that he emerged. Of course, it's not only about IT, Bangalore's transformation, but I feel like this was an important part of it. And I did feel that there was a way in which this new middle class was becoming very vocal and rightly so about civic issues, about questions of environment, urbanization, et cetera, that were troubling everyone, and maybe bringing a kind of corporate point of view to those problems. But more than that, a technology-focused point of view, which can be very useful and sometimes less so when we're looking at questions of inequality and marginalization and all the various issues that face the city. So it's not something that I've followed up on at all, and I think it would be now a good time to start that type of research again and really think about, because Bangalore is such a big city and so complex, you really can't just, label it in a particular way and try to define, the kind of question you have. Thanks.
So I think the study actually extends, I remember sitting in on many meetings with Carol in bars and restaurants and things like that, so, and homes too. You went to engineers' homes too, didn't you? But the film, we consciously decided to stick only to workspaces because there is very little documentation, even written documentation or anthropological work about workspaces in India. At least at that time, there was very little about corporate workspaces. So in the films, we consciously decided to stick to that.
When we look at this film, we see a space where people are highly creative. They talk as if they're making a product on their own. And this was 20 or 30 years back, almost 25 years.
2004, 2005.
Yeah. Okay. So, but if you look at the growth of the software industry in India, the new products, they have not produced any products from India. It's always a tie-up. You are bringing it out. You are also bringing it out, saying that this works well in when they work with the international community. Whereas if it is done here by themselves, it doesn't happen. Because the title was coding, about coding. This is much more than coding. I mean, they're talking about really good ideas and discussions. I don't know why we never took off from there as a country where we become world-class product makers. I mean, maybe I'm new to this game, so I just talked about it. Thank you. Because during that time, we were also working. Many people in, as she brought out, in government, other sectors were also working. Very innovative. But we have done much more products locally as compared to what has happened through this method. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly what Rajesh Reddy and this company was trying to break that mold and say, yes, we can create world-class products in India and, for the global market, et cetera. And you're right that, there's a kind of a narrative here that India is not innovative, but there were innovative products in so many other fields, and including from public sector industry, particularly as a lot of the films in this film festival are showing. And I think maybe, I'm not like a historian of the IT industry, but certainly the fact that India first emerged as a back office or as a, low-cost development centers for big American companies and other companies kind of, created that niche which it did not easily break out of. And also because of the fact that we see that even the startup culture, which is much more prominent in the last few years in Bangalore, there's not that much VC capital available in India. It still tends to come from the US. And then that ties you to your VC funders, and that in turn puts pressure on you to bring your product to market or do an IPO in the US market. So I think, that has, and again, I'm not an economic historian to be able to frame that correctly, but it seems that there is a kind of dependency that has continued, that has hampered this kind of innovation. And we have to remember, like, huge number of software engineers or, other types of technology people have gone and settled in the US and other countries. And so to say that, and they are the ones who are doing innovation there. So that's what a lot of people here always talk about is, if they can do it there, why is it not happening in India? And I think that's an important question also.
Yeah, I'm not really in a position to answer that, but as Carol said, many of the Indians go there, and I don't have to repeat oft-repeated thing in the media about the head of Google or the head of Microsoft or the head of IBM or Adobe. All of them are of Indian origin, but I would say that it has less to do with innovation than to do with market and money, and all of that. Even today is more in the US or in the West certainly. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. Oh, just one thing about the conference call. You saw 4 images, and just to let you know that there was no video conference call at that time. That was also recreated. We had 4 cameras in the 4 different places. Anyway, just a small filmic detail.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a specific question on the editing part. First of all, amazing documentaries. This is the first time I'm watching them, and
Thank you.
So the thing is that, of course, when I saw it the first time, and it felt very raw. Like, I felt very inviting. All these people, I felt really connected to them, even though it was like many, many years ago. I'm a Gen Z, 2000 born. So the question is that, like filmmakers like us, this generation, when I see documentaries today, there's more style than substance. And I think because of that, a lot of storytelling, goes into the mist, and people really do not connect with it. So, what would be your advice to all those filmmakers, young filmmakers who are trying to make such documentaries? What one conscious thing they should do, of course, in terms of shooting while they're shooting, but of course, in terms of editing? Because today, when I see all these documentaries, it's just too dynamic, too fast sometimes. But when I saw this today, even though I didn't feel like I was bored or anything, I felt really connected to it because I was involved in the journey of those people and what they were trying to do, what they were trying to achieve. So just that question, what one thing people should do as an editor to be conscious of that effort to kind of invite audience, take it slow, and yeah.
No, I'm glad you didn't get bored, because the second film especially, which is the 3rd film in the series, is something where people struggle to figure out exactly what we're up to, because it seems so promotional of the company. I don't have advice, but there are many long-form feature documentaries made today, which are not cut in a fast way or anything, and they're perhaps more engaging in many ways because they're made on the principles of story and this and that, so they invite audiences to join that journey of the story much more so than this film, for either of these films. I quite like some of the films made by young people, so I'm not sure I completely... But you mean like the TV kind of thing, or the stuff that appears on YouTube, maybe that's cut very fast, and yeah, I tend to agree with you. Perhaps the only advice is to find a funder like Carol or Vasavi who would let you have the freedom to do what you like, and then I guess it's a lot easier.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point, actually, finding funds just to do a small documentary. I found with another project, I wanted to do the same thing, is not easy. It's a lot easier to get research money, and so we used research money and, part of our output with the project. But I wanted to say, for those of you who are into research and not filmmaking, actually, when we made a decision to do these films, it really opened up spaces to us as researchers that we didn't have access to before, because just having to go and get permissions and say, well, for the film we need to sit in on meetings, we need to listen to your calls, that gave us access as researchers to insights that we didn't have when we were just kind of going there and doing a bunch of interviews. So it's a very good kind of methodological approach to combine filmmaking with research, if any of you are thinking of such projects. Plus the fact that you have a good research record that you can refer back to later in the form of all the footage.
Yeah, hi.
I don't know. Is it, how much time do we have? Do we have time for one or two more questions? Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's gentleman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. You,
Okay.
Mr. Anish? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
Hi.
whatever.
So, as he rightfully mentioned, that the entire filming rather seemed very raw. It was almost as if we were given a tour of the office premises with a visitor's pass, because that's literally the POV, what felt like. I want to know if there were any instances during filming where they just went, turned around and said, oh, maybe don't include that, that's confidential. That's strictly private. Because you did mention about signing an NDA, but there were quite some technological jargons and terminologies that may not be even, that laymen may not even be aware of, or could be just confidential for them. We saw them planning, we saw them pitching their ideas to clients. So I want to know what your thought process was like while making the final cut, to what not to include as opposed to what to include.
So all the jargon, I think we use largely, to suggest this kind of very opaque language, and sometimes not even necessarily with, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but it seemed to be almost, in parts, deliberately opaque. There weren't, we were given access to a certain floor in Sun Microsystems, and July Systems was in one. We just used our discretion during the filming, so if it seemed like we were being intrusive, we backed off. In general, I don't think anybody chucked us out, which they could easily have done. I mean, the interesting thing about filming a community of software engineers is that the power is in their hands. Unlike, if you, many documentary films are about, communities which are marginalized or which have less bargaining power with the filmmaker, whereas these people could even at that stage have just thrown us out at any moment. So we had to play it really carefully. I found it interesting that that you were sort of studying up rather than, so you had to be really careful while filming.
And this is true of the research also. I mean, we could not have gone to any of these companies and done interviews or anything without, we first had to go through a long process of writing to companies, getting meetings with CEOs or HR managers, convincing them. And I would say out of all the companies we approached in Bangalore, maybe 1/10 came on board. So this is also a self-selected, and out of those maybe 10 or 12 companies we worked with, we came down to these three. Because of all the concerns about confidentiality. And so generally getting access to these kind of spaces, whether it's a private sector or government organization or any such context, there is this question of a power differential where you can't really get as close as you would like, as you may do with other communities. The emphasis film that we didn't show, for example, they work entirely for US-based clients, and the team we filmed worked for a big US bank. And so we had to do a lot to make sure that the name of that client was masked, and that was the biggest concern, of course, because they in turn have an NDA with the client, right? So, but we did manage to shoot, finally, and yeah.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Hassan. Here. Thanks, Carol and Gautam, for the beautiful films. They were super engaging for me. More than fiction, some fiction films. Especially the second, the July Boys, is, I saw characters, like all characters, their development throughout the...
You're familiar with those kind of characters.
Yeah. And for me, it was like about costumes and how they used to dress up and their personalities, more than the content. Content was, of course, good. My question is, how did you, when you were shooting real situations, how did you not make them act? Like, people tend to act when the camera is on. So did you have a minimal crew, or can you talk about the technical and crew aspect
Yeah,
of
no,
that.
we were just two of us. I mean, Carol and some of her team was there sometimes. Otherwise, we were, well, actually, maybe about half the time that you all were there, and the rest of the time I was there just with one other person, the boom operator. So he had a wireless mic, which is so common these days, and I did the camera. So there were only two of us. We kind of, merged into the background like electricians or something. So they didn't pay much attention to us. But, nobody ever doesn't act in front of a camera. Everybody's aware of a camera. It's a largish camera. And so, but the face that they're presenting to a camera, conscious of the fact that they're being filmed, is interesting in itself. I mean, they're pretending as though they don't notice us, but they are obviously at all moments aware of the camera, and whatever they're saying is tempered by that fact. It's a face that they want you to see. Yeah, I think. I think there are only few moments where they forget it. He had a question. Yeah, that gentleman. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be jumping the queue.
Hi. I don't know if you were filming the last film we saw yesterday, Nama Metropolis, or this parallelly. I just wanted to take your viewpoint.
After our Metropolis?
You shot this. I just wanted to know the timeline. If you were shooting both of them parallelly or...
No. This was done 10 years before. This was done between 2004 and 2005. Okay. Our Metropolis was between 2008 and 2013. The filming.
Okay.
This we released between 2000, the three films were released between 2005 and 2006. Our Metropolis was completed in 2014.
Okay. Just a question, because in this you seem very objective. Mm-hmm. And in Nama Metropolis there is a angle towards it. Like, it's not like... but you are focusing on a certain community which feels left behind because of maybe what has happened in the software industry, where the money has come from, and maybe most of the metro is used by the people who are working in the software industry. It's accessible, yeah, mostly it's used by the middle class, which is rising up, and then there are people who have been left behind.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know your outlook. How was it changing throughout the process, or like, I don't know.
How is it changing through the making of each film or between the two films?
Between the two films, because I see a very, I don't know whether it's the same director who has made the...
Right, that's right. Yeah. People have said that, and in fact, more in appreciation of these films than our Metropolis. When we first started showing when we first started not showing, but we'd gotten into a workshop, which then... so that helped us position the film and to then, have it screened in many different places. And our Metropolis has been screened in many bigger documentary film festivals. This has been screened in more ethnographic film festivals. I'm happy with this kind of slightly removed observational stance, if not in technique, but more. So, with what can you do? With a situation like this, how does one more strongly express one's point of view? I'm quite happy to do it in a more subtle fashion. In fact, I prefer that, because you can say certain things which you can't when it's a more politically obvious stance. Personally, I'm happier doing that. Even our Metropolis is not as in your face as it could be. The number of protests are limited, and it could be that we created a film which was much more emotional or evoked a lot more sympathy. We empathize with many of the characters, but it's not a tearjerker, we hope.
Thank you. I think what she just started, right? So I've been in both the situations, so I must congratulate you. I think I could completely relate to both the films, actually, having been in the software field for...
By both, you mean both today or yesterday's and today?
So I couldn't say yesterday's,
okay.
Only the both today's, the Fun and the Sun and the July Boys, actually. Specifically the July Boys, because what I felt was, it was very, very, very objective. I couldn't see anybody acting because I've been in those situations specifically. So I can understand where, at what level you have to be more careful about, what kind of information is going out actually. But my question here is, uh, when you were filming this specifically, right, was there a specific point of view you took before and then you found out that the point of view should change afterwards while editing it? And if so, did you, kind of, I'm not too sure whether you wanted to make a statement with the films later on, but if you did, right, did this film make any change to the overall software community when you kind of screen it across to different places?
To the overall software community, I would say no, because I don't know how many people have actually seen it. But maybe Carol can answer the question about, I don't think we changed our stance very much in the making of the film. We were fascinated by these spaces, but largely, and we encountered new things, I think. I mean, even the toilet, the restroom that we went in seemed so sci-fi-like, so much in the future. So we were quite fascinated by those spaces, but I don't think that we changed our initial stance, no. Yeah, but the overall sort of the politics of it is not. We didn't change our mind about the software industry, did we? I mean,
we screened it at the companies, but we invited, especially the software engineers who were in the films, to get their reactions. And I'm trying to remember the Sun at Fun film. What was the response of the, like, they didn't see what they were doing in that film as funny in the same way that we found it to be somewhat comical. Comical in the sense that it seemed like this made-up culture where people are being kind of induced to behave in a certain way and, adopt a certain perspective which may not feel very authentic to them. But do you remember what was the feedback that we got?
Fun, well, I think Vijay Kora, this not CEO, but the head of that of the Bangalore unit, was a bit hesitant to allow to pass that, but finally agreed. I think we've used irony throughout. So the second film, especially, I mean the third in the series, July's Boys. I think we walked that edge. More so than in Fun and Sun, which is a little bit more, where our viewpoint comes through a little bit more clearly, I'd say.
Yeah. And interestingly, I mean, to me, July Boys, you can really read it in a sardonic way. I mean, to us, many of the things that these characters were saying, just represented a kind of, to me, outlandish way of thinking about things, I would say. But I think Rajesh Reddy loved the film. But we did get feedback from some of the other people that they were rather resentful that he allowed the filming. They felt that he was trying to promote himself through the film. Remember? And they were not terribly happy about being filmed in all their meetings and so on.
For instance, he says subspecies of humanity, we're part of subspecies. So, I mean, how do you read that? I mean, we can read it only in one way. Maybe other people read it differently, which is fine also. I mean, we're okay with that.
And there's also this kind of tech bro hubris, right? That, we belong to there's a new class emerging around the world and we're all the same regardless of where we come from. And we see this much more now in Silicon Valley, right? It's this kind of very enlarged ego that seems to go behind a lot of this kind of business.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Please join me in a huge round of applause for the filmmakers.